With the release of Black Panther Wakanda Forever, not only is Phase 4 over, with the exception of the Guardians Holiday Special, but we now have 30 MCU films. And who actually thought we were going to get to this point? Because I sure as hell didn't. So I decided I was going to make myself go insane by ranking all 30 of these movies from the worst to the best. Quick disclaimer though, I will be spoiling these movies, including Wakanda Forever, so I'm sorry if you have not seen it, but it wouldn't be fair to talk spoilers for the other 29 movies, but not for this one. So I will be spoiling Wakanda Forever, and also, this is just my list. There's some stuff on here you're not going to agree with, including probably the first 2 films I talk about. So just remember that. It's my opinion, it's my ranking, there's no right or wrong. That's the beauty of film. I would love to know, if not your entire list, maybe your top 10, or your bottom 10, or whatever, down in the comments. I will read it. I like to know what you guys think. So with all that said, let's get into this, ranking all 30 Marvel Cinematic Universe films from the worst to the best. It pains me to have this movie so low because it bothers me that the first true female-led Marvel movie came out so bad, but at number 30 we have...
I'm not gonna fight your war. I'm gonna end it.
Captain Marvel. In my opinion, there's really nothing about this movie that works. I think Carol Danvers is a very bland lead character. It seems like they tried to take what works about Tony and what works about Steve Rogers and put them together, but they ended up doing neither, and it's a character who it doesn't really seem like she has any traits. She sometimes seems bipolar, because sometimes she'll be super straight and stoic, and then another scene later, she'll be making a smart-ass comment, and it feels like there's a disconnect. She also goes on no discernible arc throughout the story. And regardless of all the twists and turns and information she learns and the amnesia plotline, I never felt like by the end of this movie I learned who Carol Danvers was. The main villain of Jan Rog is really nothing, and he's so one note. He's one of the worst Marvel villains. Talos the Skrull is the redeeming factor of this movie, and I can't wait for him to come back, but he's not enough to raise this movie higher on the list. While it's cool to see Nick Fury, I don't like what they did with him, and I think that him losing his eye over the result of holding a cat too close to his face is the single dumbest creative decision that the MCU has ever made. It's also shocking to me that this movie made over $1 billion, yet no one knows who these directors are. Oh yeah, did you know that Carol apparently learns to fly in this movie? Because I guess she just unlocks flight. At number 29, something that actually saddens me more.
You are not like the other gods of kill. You have something worth fighting for.
Thor: Love and Thunder may be one of the most disappointing and frustrating movies I have ever seen in my life. And I've seen the Star Wars Holiday Special twice.
A day that takes us through the darkness. A day that leads us into light.
Love and Thunder is what happens when you have someone get handed hundreds of millions of dollars and then just decide that he doesn't really give a shit about what he makes, and so he doesn't try. At no point in this movie did it seem like Taika was trying. And Taika Waititi's a great filmmaker, which is why it's so frustrating. I mean, look at his other work. The first Thor movie he did, you're gonna see, that's a bit higher on this list. Jojo Rabbit, I love that movie. Jojo Rabbit's really good. I like Taika Waititi's work. But there's just no passion in this movie. There's no care in this movie. This movie does not take itself seriously at all. You have Thor acting like a literal toddler. You have Korg, who should have died, and it's a bummer because Korg was the best part of Ragnarok, and then he's in this movie being annoying as hell, and I was so happy when Zeus killed him, but then he was alive after all. And that leads me into the other thing. This is a movie with no consequences. Korg gets stabbed and lives. Valkyrie gets stabbed and lives. Gore gets stabbed and lives. Zeus gets stabbed and lives. No one of importance in this movie dies, in a movie where the villain's whole goal is to go kill gods. His name is Gore the God Butcher, and there's no God butchering. He kills one god on screen, and the rest of it is told to us through exposition, and then Gore just steals some children and fucks off for the rest of the movie until the Shadow Realm fight, which is the only good sequence in this movie. And then the movie ends with Thor having gone through zero character growth at all, but now he has a kid, and apparently that works. The only two characters in this movie that work are Gore and Jade. Gore wouldn't work if anyone other than Christian Bale was playing him, because Christian Bale is acting in a much better movie. And Jane Foster, because Jane's arc is actually well done. That she realizes she would rather die than let the people who are fucking her over die. Because that's the whole thing in this movie, is that we have absent gods and gods who don't care, and Jane and Gore share that same similarity, and it's a similarity that a lot of characters share throughout this film, and Jane decides she would rather give her own life to save all those others. She becomes a true superhero. And this movie should have just been a Jane Foster movie.
Get loose now. No. You go low, I'll go high.
I have wings. Why would I go low?
At number 28, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. A movie that, in my opinion, really doesn't have many redeeming qualities. But it's weird because a lot of people say it's fun. Now, I do appreciate this movie's not trying to be some super high stakes thing. It's just a heist movie of 3 different parties wanting one thing and all chasing each other for it. The performances, I think, for the most part, are good. It helps that some of the characters are fun. Paul Rudd makes Ant-Man as fun as he is. I love Michael Douglas in this movie. I like Michelle Pfeiffer in this movie. Hannah John Kamen, when she gets to do stuff, is cool in this movie. But then we have Wasp getting super underused. We have Walton Goggins, who, why is he in this movie? And did you guys remember that Lawrence Fishburne's in this movie? Because I always forget. How do you put Lawrence Fishburne in a movie and make him forgettable? That should be a crime. My 2 least favorite things about Ant-Man and the Wasp, though, is that all the cool shrinking and growing was shown in the trailer. The giant Pez dispenser, the shrinking and growing lab, Giant Man coming up out of the water. Those are all such cool things. Oh yeah, the shrinking car, the little Hot Wheels tin. Those are things we got to see in the marketing. They spoiled all the cool stuff of their movie in the trailer, and that just makes the movie so much less exciting. And then you have the fact that Ant-Man is a complete idiot. In the first Ant-Man movie, he figures out that he can break into Hank Pym's vault because the door is the exact same metal that was used on the Titanic. And we know how that metal likes the cold, so he decides that if he gets the door cold enough, he can freeze it off. That's really fucking smart. And then in this movie, he is just an idiot. He's so stupid. He has the IQ of a worm in this movie. It doesn't even feel like the same character. He just stumbles through the movie being really stupid, having a broken suit that makes him less cool than Wasp. And it's so not fun. Hopefully, he's cool again in Quantumania.
Thor, your bravery will not ease your pain. Your family, your world will be extinguished.
At number 27, we have Thor: The Dark World. I originally had this in 26 switched, but considering I actually get an urge to rewatch 26, the one I have 26th, but not this one as much, means that I like that one more. There's very little that works in Thor: The Dark World. Thor is a hella bland character. He's so boring in this movie. He feels like he's on the sidelines of his own movie. You have Jane Foster, who's just a plot device and gets nothing to do in this movie besides just lead Malekith everywhere that the main characters are. And the relationship between Thor and Jane is just not there. I'm one of the people who thinks they actually had chemistry in the first Thor movie. Now, it wasn't amazing chemistry, but it was chemistry. They actually felt believable. In this movie, it clearly feels like two actors trying to get whatever sort of spark they can, and just nothing working. The redeeming factor of this movie is Loki. It's just the Loki show. Tom Hiddleston steals it. But the fact that he's the best part and the leads feel so boring and just nothing actually hurts the movie even more. Malekith, holy shit, he's a horrible villain. Ironically, not the worst MCU villain, but he's just the definition of bad guy. He has no sympathetic qualities. He has no redeeming factors. Why does he want to plunge the world back into eternal darkness? I couldn't tell you. He couldn't even tell you. I think the action can be fun at times. I think the Siege of Asgard is a cool scene. I think the fight between Thor and Kurse is a cool scene. But the final battle when they're going through portals and flipping between all 9 realms, by all accounts, should be one of the best MCU fight scenes, and it's the weakest part of the movie. On top of that, the human characters in this movie are awful. I hate Darcy. I hate Selvig in this movie. And, the intern. I don't want to talk about the intern. Let's move on.
We have loved these people since the day we arrived. When you love something, you protect it.
At number 26, we have Eternals. Eternals is very interesting, because Eternals is the first Marvel movie where I feel like it should have been a show. This movie has a lot going on. It's got a lot of world building, a lot of lore. It introduces 10 new superheroes, a whole new group of villains, and it has the job of properly explaining what the hell the Celestials are. And they have a 2.5-hour movie to do it. Now, in terms of positives, I think there's some amazing performances in here. I hope we get to see Richard Madden as Icarus again. Chloe Zhao brings probably the most visually exciting Marvel movie. The cinematography, the direction of this movie, you watch it, it's no wonder Chloe Zhao is an Academy Award-winning filmmaker with how beautiful this movie looks. Now, this movie does try to get a bit philosophical. It tries, I don't want to call it the BVS route, but it does try to more deconstruct these characters and the world we live in and talk about if humans are truly worth saving, which, as much as I appreciate that discussion, I am a human and I don't want to die. Throw that out there right now. And it doesn't help that for the God knows how many times now, this movie resorts to the world-ending final battle, which gets unexciting after a while because you know they're going to win. There are too many characters in this movie. There's only a few that stick out because they're the ones that get stuff to do. Icarus, I like. Phastos, I like. Druig and Makari, I like. Sprite annoys the shit out of me. Gilgamesh and Thena are just not in this movie enough. Salma Hayek ain't even in the friggin' movie at all. They had to write Kingo out of the movie in the most unexciting and unsatisfactory way. Who am I missing? Cersei's probably one of the worst leads a Marvel movie has ever had. She is a nothing character. I bet her and Carol Danvers would be really good friends. Oh yeah, and did you know that the main deviant's name is Crow? Because I didn't until I saw the toys. Because the villain in this movie really doesn't exist. Alright, moving on to 25.
You're right, you may not be ready, but this is my responsibility. Saving the world requires sacrifice. Sometimes people die.
We have one that if you followed my channel for a long time, you would think would be a lot lower, but it is Spider-Man Far From Home. I despise this movie. I think it's the single worst live-action Spider-Man movie we've ever gotten. And yes, I'm aware that Amazing Spider-Man 2 exists. My issue with Far From Home is that it's not a Spider-Man movie. It's an Iron Man movie. It's an Iron Man movie without Iron Man. And so instead they're like, yo, what if the whole movie is about trying to find the new Iron Man, and then we give we have Tony Stark give a teenager who's been dead for 5 years glasses that when he puts them on, he can basically murder anyone he wants with a satellite that totally breaks every single law that the entire world has ever written, and will have him almost kill one of his friends, but then he's like, no. And then he gives the glasses to Jake Gyllenhaal, whose whole motivation is that he didn't like a fucking acronym, so now he's gonna try to blow up the world and get the Queen's attention. And then at the end of the movie, Spider-Man decides he doesn't need to be Iron Man, he'll just be his own hero, as he then proceeds to build a multi-million-dollar suit in an Iron Man lab while AC/DC plays. The hell is this stupid movie? It also doesn't help that Peter Parker goes on the exact same arc he went on in Homecoming. It literally is a copy and paste. In Homecoming, he's like, oh, I need to be an Avenger. I want to live up to Iron Man. That's what I gotta be. Now, things are gonna go wrong, and I'm gonna kind of have an existential crisis, and then at the end, I'm gonna learn, after being talked to by my father figure, that I don't need to be Iron Man, I need to be Spider-Man. And then we get to Far From Home, and it starts out, and he's like, yo, I kind of want to be an Avenger. I think I kind of have to be the next Iron Man. And then he tries to do that, and then stuff goes wrong, and then he kind of has an existential crisis. And then he gets a chat with his father figure about how he doesn't need to be Iron Man. He just needs to be Spider-Man. And that's what he does. And it's a Command C, Command V. It's like they took the Homecoming script and they just did find and replace until the script looked different. Redeeming factors, Tom Holland fell into the Spider-Man role so well in this movie. This was his best performance as Spider-Man up to this point. Jake Gyllenhaal also is clearly having fun with Mysterio, and I like the chemistry between those two actors. MJ in this movie kind of annoys me, but at least they tried to make her something this time around, as opposed to just a background Easter egg character that they did in Homecoming. And the illusion sequences with Mysterio are so exciting that it's the only reason this movie is not farther on the list. At number 24.
It was real to me. To me, you were everything.
Black Widow. Talk about a disappointment. Black Widow was our first Marvel movie in like 2 years, and it was super disappointing. Black Widow should have been the next Captain America the Winter Soldier. That's what it should have been. The whole story had the potential to be that, but instead they took it in the complete opposite direction. I will say I think this is Scarlett Johansson's best performance as Natasha Romanoff. She'd been playing the character for 11 years at that point, so obviously she get better and better with each one, but definitely she is really good in that movie. And I actually really like to point out to people, I mean, just rewatch that movie and look at how good Scarlett Johansson is as Natasha Romanoff in that movie. It's probably because she's overshadowed by Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova, who is one of the best characters ever. And David Harbour and Rachel Weisz are good when they get stuff to do. Where this movie starts to falter is with everything else. You have my least favorite thing in storytelling, which is the quick fix, when they're like, we got these brainwashed people. Wait! We have a cure! And it just comes out of nowhere. And now there's a solution to the problem that they just kind of have. You have Dreykov, who... what does he want again? I don't know. But his whole thing is that he wears a fragrance that gives him a certain smell. And that smell makes no one want to kill him. To which I say, stand out of range of his smell, and you're good. There's also the whole plot hole of no one can find the Red Room, but it's floating in the sky. Someone's seen it. It's not hidden at all. It's a giant fortress in the sky. Planes are seeing it, Helicopters are seeing it. Hell, Tony Stark probably flew by it a few times. It's not even cloaked. It's just sitting there. And then there's Taskmaster. What they did to Taskmaster should be punishable by life in prison. Taskmaster is someone who has a photographic memory. He can see people do stuff, copy it, and he also likes to talk a lot of shit. In this movie, instead, they mute Taskmaster, and they make Taskmaster's whole thing that she, because it's a woman, which I'm not bothered by. I'm actually fine with it being a woman. I'm just upset they took away everything else about Taskmaster that works. They took away Taskmaster's voice. Doesn't have photographic memory. She just scans stuff and is able to kind of copy it with her like little AI thing. It's not even a skull mask. It's just a motorcycle helmet. And those aren't even... doesn't even really look like Taskmaster's colors. Where's the white? It looks like Taskmaster looks like a Nerf gun. And also, the CGI in this movie is next level bad.
Do it! This was fun! No!
I cannot believe it got VFX nominations. At number 23, we have Iron Man 2, something that rose a lot, because originally it was down by Thor the Dark World, but it moved up a few spots. Iron Man 2 is interesting because it is not good. It's actually quite bad. It has way too much in it. I mean, they try to adapt Demon in a Bottle, and then they have the whole competitor thing with Hammer, and then they've got the War Machine thing, and they've got S.H.I.E.L.D. coming in to set up the Avengers, and they've got whatever Whiplash is doing and whatever Justin Hammer's doing, and I'm like, what? And they don't... Oh yeah, and they have the whole Howard Stark thing, and none of these plot lines are executed well because they're all competing for screen time. You'll have some done fine, you'll have some really good moments like Howard Stark's amazing line to Tony Stark, which, as I get older, shit is like, makes me want to cry.
What is and always will be my greatest creation is you.
Unfortunately, Whiplash doesn't get much to do in this movie, and I mean, it's Mickey Rourke. How do you waste Mickey Rourke like that? But he gets basically nothing to do in this movie. Sam Rockwell's awesome as Justin Hammer. He redeems it. I need him to come back because he's so cool.
And it's capable of reducing the population of any standing structure to zero. I call it the ex-wife.
But the action of this movie is what puts it higher on this list than it initially was. The Monaco suit-up scene. The final fight against the Hammer drones, anytime I mention it, I have to play the clip because War Machine's guns sound beautiful. But that's it. The rest of Iron Man 2 is just a mess. Let's move on to 22.
Oh boy.
At number 22, we have Avengers Age of Ultron. I know a lot of people have started to come around on this movie, but I still keep it in the bottom 10. Now, it's raised a bit, not because I think it's gotten better, but because Marvel has made worse since then. Avengers Age of Ultron suffers from a lot of the problems that Iron Man 2 does, where there's too much in this movie, because they try to set up Phase 3, and they try to set up Infinity War, and they try to set up Black Panther, and Ragnarok, and Civil War, that they forget to focus on the title of the movie. Age of Ultron is more like the Saturday afternoon of Ultron. It is not at all an age. It's barely even an issue. I remember they even set up in the movie that he has access to nuclear codes, and it doesn't do anything with them. I like that Captain America gets more to do in this movie, but the rest of the Avengers I don't think are handled well. You have Tony kind of just being a piece of shit throughout the movie. You have that awful romance between Banner and Natasha that didn't work at all. Thor just gets written out of the movie for a little while because they don't need him because he doesn't have anything to do. I mean, Hawkeye's cool. I like Hawkeye. The movie made me like Hawkeye. It introduces Wanda, Pietro, and Vision. Wanda and Vision, who went on to become some of my favorite characters, and Quicksilver, who is someone who can run faster than a bullet but gets killed by bullets. And Ultron is not menacing after his first scene.
How could you be worthy? You're all killers.
In his first scene, he's a terrifying villain. Every scene after that, he's quipping, he's making jokes, he's being sarcastic, and he forgets words.
People create smaller people. Children. I lost the word there.
It's not an intimidating villain. I do like the Pinocchio shit, though. That's cool. I wish they embraced that. At number 21, we have The Incredible Hulk. A movie really no one likes. But you know what? I'm gonna stand by it until the day I die. This movie is kind of fire. The script, it's not the best, but I like it. It feels at times like a kaiju movie. And like, try to tell me that you didn't like Godzilla vs. Kong, because that's literally just what the final battle is. It's just Hulk and Abomination destroying Harlem. Like, how do you not enjoy that? This is gonna get me killed. This might, I can feel it already. Someone's gonna walk into that door behind me with a gun and kill me. I prefer Edward Norton Hulk to Mark Ruffalo. I just do. I think there's a certain complexity Edward Norton has that Mark Ruffalo has not brought to the Hulk. I can't quite explain what it is, but if you watch it, there's just something Edward Norton does that Ruffalo doesn't. It could be writing, directing, I don't know. But in terms of performance, I mean, Edward Norton's also a better actor. Not that Mark Ruffalo's bad, I mean, it's Edward friggin' Norton. But there's just something about it. And this is the Hulk I like, man. I mean, this is rage, berserk, angry Hulk. It's not what we're seeing now. This is he lives up to the incredible part of his name. The Incredible Hulk. I think Thunderbolt Ross is a cool villain. I mean, you can even call him a villain, he's more of an antagonist, but he's a cool villain, and I think Blonsky got more of his development in She-Hulk when they kind of touched on they thought he was the good guy of the story, because in this he feels very clearly like a bad guy, so that's a negative. And the romance between Bruce and Betty, it's not there. I'm sorry, it's not. I don't really like Liv Tyler either. But the action of this movie, I like how Hulk feels like a horror villain. He's so terrifying, and anytime someone's in a room with him, you fear for that person. That is Hulk to me. This is my Hulk. Editor John here. I just want to take a second to just appreciate how glorious Hulk's roars are in this movie. Damn, this video's long. I'm not even out of the bottom 10. Oh, yeah, I am out of the bottom 10. Alright, bringing us into the top 20, we have Captain America, the First Avenger. Captain America, the First Avenger has an interesting shift, and that's why it's so low on this list. The first part of this movie, when we have skinny Steve Rogers, and we're just in his headspace, we're exploring who he is as a character, that's some of the best storytelling Marvel's done. But then we get into the back half after he becomes Captain America, and we montage our way through the entire movie. We have the Star Spangled Man with a Plan montage. We montage through World War II. I also just don't believe the relationship between Steve and Peggy in this movie. I think subsequent MCU material has really dove into that in a compelling way. And I kind of wish they had done more with Red Skull. I like his power of the gods thing he's going for, but I think Red Skull's a villain that deserved more than one movie to truly get what he needed, but instead they did reduce him to one movie, then they turned him into this cool deity thing for the Soul Stone, and I think we needed more Red Skull. Things that worked though, Chris Evans is the only Steve Rogers I think we'll ever be able to buy on screen. Tommy Lee Jones, come on, that's great casting for that character. And Stanley Tucci is Stanley Tucci. And I think the script for this movie is great. I love, sometimes when I just need a motivation, I put on Stanley Tucci's speech about weak men and power and strength.
A strong man who has known power all his life may lose respect for that power. But a weak man knows the value of strength and knows compassion.
And I think this movie has one of the best endings of any Marvel film.
Yeah, I had a date.
Moving on to number 19, we have a movie I enjoy more than a lot of people.
You break the rules.
Look out!
You become a hero. I do it, I become the enemy. It doesn't seem fair.
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I don't dislike this movie. I don't think it's a bad movie. Granted, it's far from perfect. It's got a lot of issues I'm about to lay out for you. But every time I rewatch this movie, I have so much fun with it. I think Sam Raimi's the perfect director for Doctor Strange. Just give him a better script, preferably. Because the way he embraces the weird and the nonsensical, the way he just injects his Raimiisms into the world of the mystic arts, it's a match made in heaven. I think Doctor Strange's arc in the movie works. I know a lot of people are going to be like, arc? He doesn't have an arc. Yes, he does. Rewatch the movie. The movie literally opens with someone raising the question to Doctor Strange that he's basically one of the most powerful beings in existence, and like that's kind of a dangerous power for him to have. You know, someone says, what if you're wrong? And we sit there as the audience, and we've spent all the movies he's been in at this point being like, yeah, Doctor Strange is the guy who always knows what's right, what the correct answer is, and now we're raised with the question that he might not. He's then always told he's kind of an arrogant asshole, and he always has to be wielding the knife, and his arc through that takes him on that journey of both, you know, learning all Doctor Strange are the same, but also realizing he doesn't have to be like that, and he lets America Chavez get the final blow. And then the movie ends with one of the most powerful beings in the world now being untrustworthy. That's so cool. Wanda Maximoff is one of my favorite villains. If you saw my villain tier list I did a few months back, I put her in S tier. She is a phenomenal villain. Elizabeth Olsen nails the crap out of it. My only issue is I feel like there was one thing between the ending of WandaVision and the start of this movie we didn't see. But when Wanda's on screen, she commands our attention. She's a great villain. Her motives make sense. Yes, she's batshit crazy, but for a minute there, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I kind of understand why you know what you're doing is right. Like, I know you're wrong. I want them to whoop your ass, but I see why you think you're the good guy here. My issues are that this script was clearly rushed into production. Certain characters do not get what I feel aren't as well done as they need to be. America Chavez is just a plot device. She doesn't have really any discernible character traits. The Illuminati is important to the movie in kind of propelling Doctor Strange forward, but I wish they had done more than just show up, tell Doctor Strange he's a horrible person, and then get brutally murdered. And then you get some stupid stuff like the memory window and whatnot, and the movie moves a bit fast. In the first 15 minutes, we have one variant of Doctor Strange die, we have Christine's wedding, we have the fight with the creature whose name I can't remember right now, Gargantos, and then we have the whole thing where they introduce what the multiverse is and how it works, and then we have Wanda going berserk, and then we have to fight at Comertage, all within like the first 20 minutes of the movie. It is rushed along, but I do not dislike Multiverse of Madness like most people do, and to be quite honest, I hope Sam Raimi does the third one. At number 18...
Did you think you could stop the future? You're just a thief!
No. I'm Ant-Man. I know. Wasn't my idea.
We have Ant-Man. I have to tell a story. When this movie was coming out, I was like, this is gonna suck. I don't want to see it. My friends and I were planning on going to see it just to shit on it, and then we didn't end up doing that, and I didn't watch it for the longest time. And I finally watched it like 3 days before Captain America Civil War came out, because I was like, well, I need to catch up. So I did. And I ended up enjoying the crap out of this movie. This is just one of those feel-good movies that you just put on to have a good time. And it's small stakes, just like its sequel, but actually well done. It makes sense what's going on here. And you have Scott Lang, who by all accounts, we should not like. He's a criminal. He works at Baskin Robbins. He can't pay his child support. He's divorced. His life is kind of shit. He's not a super likable guy. But Paul Rudd makes Ant-Man likable. You've also got Michael Douglas in there as Hank Pym, which is... whoever would have thought to make Michael Douglas Hank Pym, am I right? I just wish we got to see him in the suit. And this also has just such fun side characters. I mean, you got Luis in there, who's just such a treasure. And I don't hate Yellow Jacket. I'm not a fan of Yellow Jacket, because we had seen the concept of Yellow Jacket so many times by that point, but I don't hate Yellow Jacket. The main issue with this movie is just that it feels like Iron Man and a lot of the typical superhero origin stories we've seen, which by this point we're getting tiring, which would explain why all the solo movies after it feel so different. I mean, look at the ones we got after it. I mean, Doctor Strange feels like Iron Man, but then we get Homecoming, we get Black Panther. Captain Marvel, for all its faults, at least tried something different for the origin story, which I appreciate. I like that they started to break the mold after this movie because they saw that people don't like this and don't like that anymore. And yes, this movie is just Iron Man, but with ants, which I don't hate, but it doesn't feel super original. Also, what's up with this movie's physics? It makes no sense. They say he retains the same, weight, but it's all concentrated on a single point, which is how he gets smaller, but then he's clearly light because no one feels him on their shoulder, and their arm doesn't, snap off. And then you've got the weird way that sizing works, where you have Yellow Jacket gets hit by a giant gets hit by Thomas. He's small. He gets hit by Thomas the Tank Engine, and Thomas stops and falls over as if Yellow Jacket was the weight of a normal human, when he's not. So it doesn't make sense. Also, how does Ant-Man breathe if he's smaller than the oxygen molecules? At number 17, we have a movie I do not hate. I realize I've said that for almost every movie in this part of the video.
I'm gonna offer the choice. Do you want an empty life or a meaningful death?
Iron Man 3 is kind of fire. I'm just gonna lay out my issue with the movie first. The twist is dreadful, because they were setting up Ben Kingsley as the coolest villain they've ever had, and by God, when he's on screen, he's the coolest villain they've ever had. But then they twist it into him being just a drunk, bad, out-of-work actor who was manipulated by terrorists to lead the 10 Rings, and then Killian is like, oh, but I'm the real mastermind, but I didn't like Killian that much anyway. And that whole thing just falls flat. But the rest of the movie, I like that it's a character study of Tony Stark dealing with his PTSD. Something super adult, by the way. And then you have all these people coming in here ready to absolutely ruin his life when his life already sucks. And I like that they take him out of the suit for most of the movie, because the suit's not Iron Man, the person's Iron Man, and they just deconstruct Tony Stark, and we get to know Tony Stark really well before he suits back up for the end of the movie. The action is great. The Malibu Mansion attack when they destroy the house is phenomenal. That fight where Tony and Harley have to fight Ellen Brandt and Savin is awesome. The Air Force One scene is one of the coolest MCU action scenes, and I like the final fight a lot. I just love seeing 35 Iron Man suits fly around. But it's funny that there's certain things that happen in this movie that just they don't mention again. Remember when Pepper turned into a nuke? And then Tony's like, oh, I'll fix it. And then they just kind of never mentioned again that she turned into a nuke. I do like the end of this movie, and I never took it as Tony retiring so much as him sort of accepting where he's at now. And then that kind of brings him into his Iron Man arc for the rest of the MCU. So, Iron Man 3, a movie that I don't love, but is just a good movie. Moving on to 16. This, my friends, is the hottest take.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
I don't love Avengers Endgame. I really don't. I kind of don't understand why so many people still think it's like the golden standard for Marvel movies. It has so many problems. So in terms of things I like, I think the first, up until they kill Thanos the first time when Thor beheads him, I think it's the best. I think it's some of the best Marvel.
I dream about you. It's always you.
What did you do? I went for the head.
I love how just depressed everyone is and seeing Tony think he's gonna die in space. And then everyone just trying to figure out who their allies are and what's happening. And then the decision to go attack Thanos. And that entire scene up to Thor beheading him. It's so good. And the third act is good. The third act is mostly good. But, you know, after the time jump, then the rest of the movie happens. And we have a rat saves Ant-Man in probably the laziest bit of writing in this movie. We have Hulk turn into Smart Hulk off screen. We have Thor have no arc whatsoever where he beheads Thanos, gets all depressed. They talk him into coming back purely because there's beer on the ship. He runs away a bunch. And then he says, let's kill Thanos properly, but at no point in the movie was Thor executing Thanos shown as a bad thing, so I'm not sure where the arc is there. You have Hawkeye in this movie, who I love, but he's not given enough to do. That said, he's given a great scene with Natasha.
You know what I've become.
Well, I don't judge people on their worst mistakes.
Maybe you should.
Who I think is handled great in this movie. Steve Rogers, who's handled great in this movie. Tony Stark, who is handled the best in this movie. And so much of the movie is just kind of without a villain, as you have 2014 Thanos dicking around, just trying to figure out what he's going to do. The entire time heist feels so inconsequential purely because of how the time travel laws work that really nothing they're doing is going to matter for the main timeline anyway, so long as they get the Infinity Stones. So, like, who actually gives a shit? They're not rewriting history at all, which is part of the excitement of time travel storylines. And so you spend most of the movie without any clear threats or opposition besides funny stuff like Tony having to give himself a heart attack and Nebula just shoving her hand into a laser grid because she feels like it, Rocket creeping up on Jane Foster. Like, that's all the time heist really is. Then you get to the final battle, which is amazing, amazing, amazing. For the most part, we never get to see Drax fight Thanos. We never get to see Hulk fight Thanos. We don't get to see Nebula confront her father. They rush Gamora's redemption because she wasn't really bad, but they kind of rushed that along to have her fighting with all the Avengers. And it's so cool to hear Cap say Avengers Assemble. It's so cool to hear him say Mjolnir. But those awesome hype moments at the end of the movie just do not redeem the lazy writing they did throughout the rest of it. And the ending breaks all time travel logic.
I'm not a queen or a monster. I'm the goddess of death. What were you the god of again?
Bringing us into the top 15, we have Thor Ragnarok. Even though Taika destroyed these characters in Love and Thunder, it doesn't stop Ragnarok from being a very fun movie with some big flaws. But I love Thor in this. I love his relationship with the Hulk in this. I think Hulk's very funny in this. This is not the direction I like for Hulk, but hey, it's better than Smart Hulk, am I right? This is the movie. This is the movie, ladies and gentlemen, where Korg is a cool character.
Piss off, Ghost!
Valkyrie's also a cool character. Loki's an awesome character in this. Loki's redemption arc in this movie is beautiful. That elevator scene is the best scene in this whole thing of Thor and Loki just talking, and it pulls at the heartstrings every time I watch it.
Do you truly think so little of me? Loki, I thought the world of you.
Hela, I mentioned, amazing villain. Jeff Goldblum as Jeff Goldblum is awesome. But my one issue, my two issues with this film. Scourge goes on a redemption arc but was never evil. He spends the entire movie kind of questioning Hela and not wanting to do what she wants him to do. So his redemption arc isn't earned because he was never bad. And then the other thing is that there's a weird tonal difference. Alright? Which is a thing Taika tends to do. Where we have our characters laughing and having a good time, making jokes and talking about a weapon that's good for fighting 3 vampires who are huddled together, and we have Hulk acting like a big baby, and we have Valkyrie all drunk all the time. And then it cuts to Asgard, and Hela is killing everyone, and Heimdall is trying to save people, and everyone's on the run from the god of death, and it's two completely different movies. The tone is not the same at all for those two things, and it's so distracting that it brings this movie down quite a bit. But I don't hate this movie. I want to say I don't dislike. Most of these movies I like, and from this point up, almost all the movies I'm going to talk about have barely any negatives, if any at all. But there's a lot of them, so they can't all be near the top. So Ragnarok sits comfortably right here in the middle.
I've spent so many years peering through time, looking for you.
At number 14, we have the first Doctor Strange. A movie that I think almost fully works if it didn't also feel like it's just doing the typical origin story formula. I love how the mystic arts work in this. I love the character of Doctor Strange. This introduced the world to Wong, who quickly became a fan favorite. The Ancient One in this is great. The mind-bending, friggin' you have no clue what the hell's going on, imagine being high while you watch this movie type effects are so cool. The Cloak of Levitation, also, I should mention. I like that Doctor Strange saves the world by not beating the villain. He just annoys Dormammu until the end.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
But my issue with this movie lies with the villain. Caecilius. They had one of the best actors in the world right now, Mads Mikkelsen, playing Caecilius. And he's nothing. He's a very boring villain. And if you read the prelude comic to Doctor Strange, which I don't really want to spoil for you, because I think it's a great story, but if you were to read the Doctor Strange prelude that kind of dives into Caecilius, the whole comic's about Caecilius and how he became this guy, it's so great. And it turns him into an amazing villain. The only issue is we don't get any of that in the movie. Instead, we get a one-note guy who wants to get rid of time because he hates time. We don't know why. You have to read different material to learn why. And that, my friends, is some Star Wars type shit. Moving us to 13. This actually was initially in my top. It was number 10, so it was in the top 10. I moved it down because there's a couple movies I just felt like putting a bit higher than it.
My son, you can't run from your past.
But it hurt to put Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings this low. Because I think this is one of the cooler solo movies that the MCU has done, but my issue is it feels like typical MCU. It feels like we've seen this movie done before. Granted, not in a cool martial arts way, but it feels like we've seen stuff like this done before. We've got Katie, who's the token MCU character. We've got, Shang-Chi is amazing. I love Shang-Chi. He's a great character. I like his sister too, for the most part, when she's not annoying me. But she's a pretty compelling character. I like her. I'm definitely open to seeing more of her. We've got Wenwu, who, holy shit, one of the best Marvel villains. I'd say he's up there with Thanos and Green Goblin in terms of best Marvel villains, and his sacrifice at the end is just a boom right there. You've got amazing action in the movie. I always love pointing out the bit in the final fight when Shang-Chi and Wenwu each have 5 of the rings and they're fighting each other with that. That's my favorite fight in the movie. It does fall into the typical MCU mold that it doesn't feel too different, you know? Outside the action, doesn't feel much different. We've seen a lot of these characters before, and it doesn't help that the final battle just turns into a giant CGI spectacle where they're jumping around on dragons when the rest of the movie felt more grounded with its martial arts. It's a big shift in the third act, and that just doesn't work for me. I need my third acts to feel consistent with the rest of the movie. So for that, I do have to drop Shang-Chi to 13. Not because it's bad. Again, this was a top 10, but there's 3 movies I just felt like putting a little bit above it. So let's hop into number 12, which is going to be another really hot take.
For through your arrogance and stupidity, you have opened these peaceful realms and innocent lives to the horror and devastation of war.
Thor is the best Thor movie by a pretty big margin. I love the way Thor's written in this movie with this Shakespearean character and this whole Shakespearean thing we get with the way the story's told, and with Asgard and the regal look all the characters have, and then how they take that and do a fish out of water storyline where he meets humans and he learns humility and he learns to be worthy of picking up the hammer. And I don't care what anyone says, there's chemistry between Thor and Jane in this movie. One of the best moments is when he's explaining the 9 realms to her, and it just warms me damn heart.
Vanaheim, Jotunheim, and Asgard. And that's where I come from.
Thor's arc, I mean, this is a character arc right here, because by the end of the movie, it feels so earned that he gets that hammer by the end of it, after he has sacrificed everything. And then there's Loki, who's incredible. This is not the best Loki that we've had. He's been better in other projects, but he's great. I mean, there's a reason Tom Hiddleston's been around so long. He's so good as Loki. Loki being the god of mischief, just wanted to put himself in power and be all cool like that. It's so... I just slapped my thigh. All in all, just a great... Oh yeah, Anthony Hopkins as Odin. Just all in all, a very, very good movie. One I love rewatching. Also, the music. I could keep going on forever. I'm going to move on. Alright, at number 11, we have the newest entry in the MCU.
We know what you whisper.
Black Panther Wakanda Forever doesn't quite crack the top 10. I go very in depth in my non-spoiler and spoiler review as to why it doesn't quite get there, but damn if Wakanda Forever did not leave an impact, right? I bet this is going to leave just as big a cultural footprint as the first one of dealing with grief and loss and life and legacy, and to take a nation that is kind of struggling and is in a period of mourning, and then to put them in this political conflict with Talokan because Namor is pissed about what's happening with Vibranium now that Wakanda exposed themselves, and there's this big political conflict there. And then you have Shuri at the center who's losing everything. She lost her brother. She loses, again, spoiler alert, she loses her mom in this movie, and this whole journey of her trying to figure out what the hell to do that ultimately leads to her deciding that she needs to become the next Black Panther to save Wakanda, and going on this beautiful arc that mirrors what T'Challa went on in Civil War. And Namor is a great character. It's hard to call him a villain because he doesn't seem like a villain, but technically he is the villain, so he's one of the best Marvel villains also. Ryan Coogler's 2 for 2 on villains, by the way. And it's a movie that, for such cool moments, like seeing Ironheart and getting to see an Iron Man type suit back in action, and all this awesome action with the Dora Milaje and the flooding of Wakanda, and seeing a whole new city underwater, that it's the two quiet moments that bookend the film that resonate so hard, of the movie opening with the emotional death of T'Challa and a silent Marvel fanfare, and ending with Shuri sitting on a beach burning funeral garb on a fire while no music plays and we just hear the crackling of branches. Like, if this movie didn't make you an emotional wreck for 24 hours after you saw it, I'm sorry, I just don't think you're human. And one of my new favorite moments of all time in the MCU, when they're all in Jabari land, not sure what they're gonna do to defeat Namor, I'm sorry. And you see the ship overhead, and Shuri drops in, and M'Baku yells, "The Black Panther lives." It's a top 10 moment in a movie that almost cracked the top 10, but it got slightly beaten out by what is number 10. The first Black Panther. Black Panther and its sequel are tight. They're sticking together in this ranking. Black Panther barely beats Wakanda Forever, purely because Wakanda Forever felt like it was a bit too long. It felt like it had some pacing issues, whereas the first Black Panther does not. This is a 2-hour, 15-minute movie that flies by. You've got two great villains with Ulysses Claw and Eric Killmonger. Now, I have gone on record saying there's a split with the first half and the second half of this movie, that they feel different, but at least one leads into the other in a way that feels natural. The Korea chase, the action in this movie is almost perfect because the Warrior Falls fights are good. The Korea chase sequence is the best action sequence either of the Black Panther films have had, and it shows the magic. This is not a recast T'Challa thing. I'm staying out of that debate. I don't want to get involved in it. But it just goes to show the magic that Chadwick Boseman, the star power and the charm magic Chadwick Boseman has in this movie as T'Challa. I rewatched it the night before Wakanda Forever, and it's like you cannot deny how amazing he is. The negative, the final battle sucks. The CGI is so noticeable. There's about 24 people fighting in the Civil War for the country, and I don't like it. But the rest of this movie is amazing. There's a reason it became a cultural phenomenon. It's a good friggin' film. Let's hop back to everyone's favorite webhead for a couple minutes.
Peter, what is going on with you?
I'm really sorry. I'm so busy. I'm slammed.
Don't mess with me, because I will kill you and everybody you love.
Spider-Man Homecoming is a movie I've had a weird relationship with, because like I used to love it, then I was like, yeah, it's not that great. Now I feel like it's sitting comfortably in the this is my comfort movie territory. Spider-Man Homecoming is the movie I play when I'm depressed. I pop it in and I just have a good time for 2 hours. It's such a fun movie. A lot of people are quick to be like, well, it sucks because he has an Iron Man suit. That's the whole point of the story. The story is literally him being like, nah, screw that. I'm embracing the sweatsuit, which is a beautiful arc for him. The whole thing is if you're nothing without the suit, you shouldn't have it. That's literally the theme of the movie. Tony Stark pointed out that he should not be wearing an Iron Man suit. Like, if you missed that, I'm sorry. The movie spells it out for you. It's not an Iron Man movie, which some people will say, at least one person I know of will say. It's very much a Spider-Man movie with a great Spider-Man story. You've got Vulture, who I never would have thought they'd make Vulture a compelling villain, but they did, of making him a scavenger-like person who's just trying to provide for his family. And the amazing plot twist that had the whole theater in shock, and I firmly believe is, you know, an Empire Strikes Back level plot twist.
He must be Peter.
The one thing that can make this movie better is if the whole thing was in New York, because they take him out of New York for a big chunk of it, but we had not gotten to see Peter in New York before. We had not gotten to see this Peter in New York before they take him out of it a lot, actually, because they took him to Germany, then they took him to DC, then they took him to space, and then they took him to Europe. All right. At number 8.
We're not a team. We're a time bomb.
I doubt the Avengers will dip below my top 10. If it happens, it's because there's going to be so many movies that I literally can't fit it into my top 10. But this movie has been in my top 10 for 10 years. I know there weren't even 10 movies 10 years ago, but this movie has been one of the best MCU movies since it came out. I don't care how many movies they make, how many Avengers movies they make, there is not a single moment in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe that will top when the Avengers first circled up. It was a near impossible task that Joss Whedon had to bring these characters together, to bring these heavy hitters from all these other movies together, and then effectively team them up and build the relationships with them in a world where you also have the side characters like Nick Fury and Coulson. They have their own stuff going on. Then you have Loki wanting to bring an army to Earth with Thanos behind the scenes. It's a lot. I do not envy Joss Whedon at all, and he pulled it off. I know we hate Joss Whedon now, but goddamn, he made a great movie in The Avengers, and there is no level of him being canceled, rightfully so, that will ever make me dislike what he did with Avengers. But no, Avengers isn't perfect. Captain America does not have a lot to do in this movie, and I don't like that the entire Chitauri are effectively battle droids, and that for some reason these sentient beings all die when the command ship dies. But the rest of Avengers, straight fire. And that brings us into the top 7. Now, what you're going to notice about my top 7 here, it's actually something all the top 10 have done, but especially the top 7, is every single one of these feels different. All of these sort of reinvent in a way, and they all feel like they break the MCU mold in just the right way.
Your work has been a gift to mankind. You've shaped the century. I need you to do it one more time.
At number 7, we have Captain America, the Winter Soldier. I don't like Winter Soldier as much as a lot of people. I'm sorry. It's a movie I really like, though. It's a movie I really love. I have one negative with it. But I don't think it's a top 3. I don't think it's a top 2. I don't think it's a number 1, like a lot of people do. There's a plot hole in the movie that, or not plot hole, it's just to add a character moment. Nick Fury would never think Project Insight's a good idea. In fact, he made the Avengers to fight shit like Project Insight. But the rest of this movie, goddamn! You got some of the best Captain America. This is the best Black Widow has been, quite frankly. The Winter Soldier is scary, badass, cool looking, but still has that bit of humanity behind him that makes him more than just a one-note mercenary. You have Robert Redford playing Alexander Pierce. Take a second and think about that. Robert Redford in the MCU. That's cool. And he plays Alexander Pierce amazing, and the reason he's one of the great villains is because, just like one of the villains we're going to talk about later, he's just a guy who manages to destroy so much. And this movie was kind of what started the domino effect of everything we've seen in the MCU now. Most of the stuff that has gone wrong in the MCU has been a direct result of S.H.I.E.L.D. falling and the world losing that security. The Avengers can break because there's not a shield to hold the Avengers on a leash anymore, right? Infinity War happens because there really isn't a shield anymore. So much of the domino effect the MCU has had of shit going wrong happens because of what happened in Winter Soldier. And yes, this movie's emotional as hell with the I'm with you to the end of the line.
I'm with you to the end of the line, pal. Because I'm with you to the end of the line.
The action's great with the elevator fight. But the highway one-on-one with the Winter Soldier is still my favorite fight scene. There's so much in Captain America: The Winter Soldier to love, but I think it deserves to be here. I don't love it as much as most people, but goddamn, I love it. Alright, number 6! Guardians of the Galaxy! The first Guardians is a movie I thought was going to suck, and I ended up loving. I love how it's very hard to do a team-up movie as your first movie, but James Gunn successfully took these 5 characters, clearly defined who they were, teamed them up in one movie, and it worked, and it made sense. He introduced some of the best Marvel characters, I feel. Groot and Rocket, damn. The rest of the Guardians are great too, but they don't have anything on Groot and Rocket, and Rocket, probably the most complex and layered character we've seen as explored in the sequel to this movie, which I also haven't talked about, so you know that's pretty damn high, that I'll be talking about here in a couple minutes. Although with how long this video's taking, it'll probably be in about 20 minutes that I get to talking about that. My issues with this movie, though, are the villains. I don't think Ronan's that cool, and they gave Nebula depth later, but they didn't in this movie. She's just an agent of Ronan in this. Thanos is in it for a scene.
Return to me again empty-handed, and I will bathe the starways in your blood.
But this movie has such an emotional heartbeat, man. This is a movie that's almost hard not to cry during. And anyone who has a very good relationship with their mom has trouble getting through this movie. I mean, I'd probably say my mom's my best friend, and so it's hard for the two of us to watch this movie. That opening with her dying and Peter getting warped up into the spaceship, and the last thing he says before he gets abducted is he yells for his mom. And then the ending when he sees her, when Gamora says, "Take my hand," and it's her there.
Take my hand, Peter.
And then the ending note.
You are the light of my life, my precious son, my little Star-Lord.
It's so good and so emotional and heartfelt, and I adore this movie. I cannot wait because I'm going to rewatch it. I'm excited because before Volume 3, I'm going to rewatch 1, 2 in the holiday special. I'm going to do like a 4-day. I might just do a 2-day. No, I'll do a 4-day thing where I watch 1 a day going into Volume 3. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Let's move into the top 5.
Peter, you're struggling to have everything you want while the world tries to make you choose.
Spider-Man No Way Home. This movie takes what you need in a good Spider-Man story, but then it puts in what Multiverse of Madness should have been. You've got all these other Spider-Men coming in my dog's barking, but you've got all these other Spider-Men who are coming in, able to teach our Tom Holland Spider-Man all these valuable lessons and help him deal with his rage and his revenge and his anger. And you've got just all these great villains returning. Obviously, they can't do with Sandman and Lizard, but I wish they could have done. I think they could have just been taken out of the movie, quite frankly. Electro is cool. I like Electro. I like how he looks in this. I like they gave him the crown. Alfred Molina, it's like he never left the role of Doc Ock. He flowed into it so well. And Green Goblin became one of the best villains the MCU has ever had.
That's some neat trick. That sense of yours.
And he's not even from the MCU. You've got the super emotional death of Aunt May. You've got Spider-Man having to deal with everything he's gone through and really not really knowing what's going to go on. He loses hope, and then he has the Spider-Men who have lost all their hope previously coming in to help give him hope again. It's stupid as hell they put a shield on the Statue of Liberty, though, and I know they only did it so they could destroy the Statue of Liberty without actually destroying the Statue of Liberty. And the last 5 minutes of this movie, I think, are a masterclass in superhero storytelling. How this movie ends with Peter losing everything, him willing to let go of MJ because he knows she's safer without him, and him swinging through the city to spend a Christmas alone but being Spider-Man because that's what people need. That's great. Not just Spider-Man storytelling, not just great superhero storytelling, but great storytelling. And that's why No Way Home deserves the top 5. At number 4, we have a movie I used to have lower.
Final warning.
I could do this all day.
Captain America Civil War. I love almost every single aspect of this movie. The Team Cap, Team Iron Man fight, it seems, natural. It doesn't feel forced in any way. And even though we know Cap was right, there's moments in the movie where you understand Team Iron Man. And you kind of start to flip-flop certain things. I know I watched this movie, I'm like, yeah, I know freedom is a good thing, but shit, Tony kind of has a good point. And I'm like, oh wait, but no, Cap has a good point, so let's go back over here. And if you don't see the other side as possibly right at any point in the movie, you're just kind of watching the movie wrong. And even though we've got all the Avengers, they firmly ground it in a Captain America story that they just use the other characters to enhance, notably Tony Stark's Iron Man, who is done so well here. His motives, his goals, they all make sense. And that final conflict, I know why they're fighting. I know why Tony's fighting Bucky and Steve, and I know why Steve and Bucky are fighting Tony, and I'm not rooting for anyone. I just want them not to kill each other. And then you have Zemo, who's one of the best Marvel villains. Because Zemo, well, Falcon and the Winter Soldier kind of ruined Zemo because they made him royalty and they made him all rich. But in Civil War, Zemo, who's just portrayed as a normal guy. I'm going to pretend Falcon and the Winter Soldier Zemo isn't a thing for the next minute. You have a normal friggin' guy. No powers at all. He has nothing. And he manages to take down the Avengers. That's cool. Now, my issue with this movie is that Wanda doesn't really... I don't know with Wanda, because it seems like she's Team Iron Man for most of the movie, then decides to be Team Cap. It's what they do with She-Hulk in the Civil War II comic, where it's like she's totally going that way, but then they need another member, so then she has to go this way. That's basically it. But I mean, they introduced Black Panther in an amazing way. They introduced Spider-Man in a good way.
Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you.
And people are like, he would never realistically be Team Iron Man. Yeah, Tony lied to him. You've got Ant-Man who steals the show in this movie. I think Ant-Man's the best part of the airport battle. You've got the amazing airport battle. And then my one other issue is it feels like there's just not enough consequences. Rhodey gets paralyzed but is able to walk by the end. Half the Avengers get arrested but are freed by the end. Steve and Tony have a falling out, but then Steve says he's still okay being Tony's friend at the end. It feels like there's not enough fallout in terms of the Avengers. Now granted, there's fallout in the world of the MCU because the only way Infinity War is allowed to happen is because the Avengers break up. But there's not enough character fallout that there should have been for this film. Top 3.
All you do is yell at each other. You're not friends.
No, we're family. Except maybe her.
We have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. A lot of people have this low. I don't understand why. I love this movie. I think it's amazing. I think it is a step up from the first. I think it gives us a much better villain. I mean, who would have thought Ego the Living Planet would have ever worked? But he did. So we have a much better villain in Ego the Living Planet. We have much more fleshing out of our characters. We get more in terms of Star-Lord. We get a lot more for Gamora and Nebula. We get that amazing moment where we get to learn how Drax feels all the time. And even though Drax gets sidelined in this movie, we still get a lot of insight into Drax. This makes Rocket one of the most complex characters Marvel's ever had, and his relationship with Yondu and making Yondu so important that his sacrifice is the saddest thing that's ever come out of this entire 30 movie and 8 show franchise, and that's just counting the main Disney stuff, not the rest of it. And yes, I'm aware that for a lot of this movie, there's not really a villain because Ego's pretending to be a good guy and you don't really have the Sovereign being a lot of a threat. But that's not true at all because while Star-Lord, Gamora, and Nebula are on Ego's planet, which is mysterious from the moment you get there and you know something's not right, you have the whole Ravager thing going on. There's conflict. I don't know where people say there's not conflict for most of this movie, because there is. The story is a much slower burn than the first one, but there's a difference between slow and slow burn. Slow burns can be good if done right, which this one was. Slow is just a term for bad. Moving on to the top two. Anyone who's followed my channel for like more than a day knows what my top two, or what the order of the top two is going to be.
When I'm done, half of humanity will still exist.
But at number 2, we have Avengers Infinity War. Infinity War does 99% of what it has to do right. It brings in Thanos and makes him the most compelling and sympathetic villain the franchise has ever had. You don't want Thanos to win, but you know where he's coming from. It takes over 20 characters and it gives them all compelling stories. You know, Cap, Thor, Tony, Doctor Strange, Peter, Spidey, Black Widow, Black Panther, Bucky, Falcon. Everyone in this has a thing going on that almost works. Hulk is where this movie doesn't. Hulk is the only thing preventing Avengers Infinity War from being number 1 on my list, because this is where they start to screw up Hulk. They took him and they set up a good story with Hulk where it's like, oh, Hulk's beaten. He's scared. He doesn't want to come back out. And then we never get a payoff for that. And Infinity War and Endgame are not meant to be a part 1, part 2, which means we should have satisfying conclusions to our characters in this movie and then build on it in Endgame, but we don't. The movie ends with Hulk scared to come out, he goes on no arc at all, and the movie ends with Hulk still afraid. So he does nothing. Other than that, this is the best Thor writing. Infinity War's the best Thor movie ever. I need Martin McFeely to get back on Thor ASAP, because those people knew how to write Thor, the Russos knew how to direct Thor. Now I'm just upset about Love and Thunder again. And to take, 10 years and give it such a good payoff of all the places these characters are at now versus where they end in the movie. You could have ended the MCU right after Infinity War and it would have been a really depressing ending, but it would have been a good ending. Just with Thanos destroying half the universe, sitting on his porch and watching the sunrise on the universe. Infinity War's a beautiful movie. It's a giant blockbuster that at its core is still just a movie about heart and just about these people. I mean, you have friggin' Wanda having to blow a hole in Vision's head. Shit, man, that's a good scene. But it is such a great start to the end of the Infinity Saga. It's just a shame that pretty much none of the movies... You ever think about that? Infinity War, up until Shang-Chi, Infinity War was the truly last good MCU movie, because you had Infinity War, which was incredible. Then you had Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, Endgame, and Far From Home, which were all disappointments. So, damn! But yes, Infinity War is an incredible film, and with the exception of what they do with Hulk, and that one shot where we have the stupid green screen Mark Ruffalo, the movie is perfect besides those two things. But there can only be one number 1. Iron Man, the movie that started it all, is still the best Marvel movie. I think it's the only A+ movie we have. It's not the only A+ thing in general. A couple shows deserve an A+. Daredevil Season 3. But it's the only A+ MCU movie. We have a great character in Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man. We have a good villain in Obadiah Stane, played by Jeff Bridges, who now doesn't feel that exciting because we have a lot of villains who are just the antithesis of the hero. But at the time, we only had one Marvel movie and he was the only one. It worked and his motives make sense. We had a great romance because they weren't really romantic partners, but you could feel the hint of it with Pepper and Tony. Terrence Howard, while not, Don Cheadle's a better roadie, but I love Terrence Howard as Rhodey. I think the best Iron Man suit is in this movie. Shout out Mark III, still the best. Also, the best CGI out there. Iron Man CGI is flawless. There's not a single moment where there is a hiccup that you can point out in the movie. The CGI is amazing. It also helps they have practical suits. They built that shit. You have, you know, Yinsen, and you have his whole relationship with Tony, and this movie's so fast-paced. It feels like a 90-minute movie. It runs by so quick. And by the end, you have the best character arc we've seen in a Marvel movie with Tony Stark as he announces that he is Iron Man, which then brings us into this entire universe that we know and love. Marvel has not made a film better than Iron Man, and quite honestly, I don't know if they will make a film better than Iron Man. Because if they haven't yet, I don't know how they're going to. They've had 29 attempts at besting it and have not. Well, there you guys go. That was a long freaking video, but that is my ranking of all 30 MCU films. Let me know at least some of your list, even if it's just like your top 5, down in the comments below. I would really like to know. I will try to do this next year after we get however many more movies are coming out next year, as well as however many shows are coming out next year, or I'll just save it for the end of Phase 5. I might just do that. We're going to see what I end up doing, because these videos take forever to make. But there you guys go. So let me know all that down in the comments below. Also leave a like on the video, subscribe, click on the bell icon to receive all notifications from the MCU HQ. That's going to be it. Have a great day, guys.